Would you be surprised to learn that the origins of zoning laws in your town come from a racist background or even elitist oversight? Why do our cities have zoning laws? What are the origins of these laws? Based on my research, almost every major city, with the exception of Houston, Texas, has zoning laws in place. I did a little digging on the matter, and I'm going to reveal my findings on the why and what of zoning laws. Spoiler alert, you may find this video and my findings to be a little appalling. Now let's dive in. Many people have embraced the concept that zoning laws are intended to protect their property from undesirable establishments like a strip club or a bar setting up shop next to their residence. While there is some validity to this, it's important to recognize that this isn't the primary rationale behind the existence of zoning laws and housing regulations. Now, if you and I were to use derogatory racial language in our day-to-day conversations, we would likely be perceived as offensive, prompting most people to distance themselves from us. However, if we were elected officials or individuals engaged in urban planning, few would take issue if we supported government policies that unfairly targeted and discriminated against certain racial or ethnic groups. The origin and evolution of zoning laws. Back in 1880, San Francisco enacted a law that required laundries in wooden buildings to obtain licenses. While this might have been a reasonable precaution against fire hazards, the enforcement of this law disproportionately targeted the Chinese community. While white-owned laundries received licenses, those operated by Chinese individuals were denied. This led to the case of Yick Wo versus Hopkins, which reached the Supreme Court. The court determined that although the law seemed impartial on paper, it was being enforced in a discriminatory manner. This case was pivotal because it marked the early stages of zoning laws in the United States. The concept of scientific management, imported from Europe, was introduced by progressives in the 19th century and applied to land use planning. Cities like Los Angeles, Boston, and New York adopted these ideas. Unfortunately, Baltimore became the pioneer in openly implementing zoning laws with racially motivated objectives. By 1910, Baltimore passed laws aimed at segregating African Americans and whites. During the late 1800s and early 1900s, various societal issues, including public health, immigration, and eugenics intersected. This mixture of genuine science and pseudoscience influenced political decisions that disadvantaged groups like immigrants from Southern Europe, African Americans, and Hispanics, along with the economically disadvantaged. Meanwhile, and of course, opportunistic individuals exploited these situations for personal gain. The racial bias in zoning laws. As African Americans left the South to participate in World War I, cities outside of the South began adopting zoning laws with racially discriminatory intentions. Economic concerns provided a scapegoat to establish standards that excluded African Americans from certain areas. Although the Supreme Court overturned these laws in the 1970 case of Buchanan versus Worley, cities still continued to pass similar laws nationwide. In 1926, the Supreme Court's Euclid versus Ambler decision solidified the legitimacy of zoning laws. This decision considered an apartment complex as a potential threat to property values, establishing economic interests as a driving force behind zoning regulations. Contrary to the belief that urban designs are unique, a small group of city planning consultants, including Harland Bartholomew and Frederick Law Olmsted Jr., played a pivotal role in designing many American cities. Bartholomew was a consultant for numerous city planning departments at the time. Furthermore, he held prejudiced views and actively worked to circumvent legal prohibitions against segregation. He implemented urban renewal projects that uprooted African American communities, resulting in financial and social hardships. While zoning laws were initially introduced under the pretext of safeguarding property values, their evolution was heavily influenced by racial biases. The discriminatory intentions behind these laws combined with economic interests, have shaped urban development and the lives of marginalized communities. To wrap things up, I want to know, does this video and the information I provided change your perspective on city zoning laws? Let me know in the comments below. For more free real estate investing content, visit investormike.com and click Learn.